Hey Overlake SM, welcome to the best night of the week, the night we are together with our small groups. And though it's been, like 672 days since we've actually been together in the same place, I don't know if that's the right count, but it feels like it's been that many days. Even though we're far apart, we still get to be together with our small groups, with our friends in our groups, and our leaders in our groups. And so tonight really is the best night of the week. And tonight we're continuing our series on Joseph. We're talking about his life. And tonight we're talking about this idea that even when we can't see the bigger picture, we trust that God is at work for us and he's working things out for our good. And so I'm excited for us to talk about that tonight. It's going to be a good night. We're going to have some singing time. We're going to have some game time. We're going to have some message time. And then we're going to have the best time. We're going to have small group time. So you're going to want to check this out. And you're going to want to watch this whole thing with your group. Don't skip. Just watch it. Do it. It's good for you. So here's the thing. Before we get into all that stuff, let's listen to what happened this past weekend at the backyard mission trip. See ya.
Guys, thank you so much for participating in our virtual BMT this past weekend. It was our first time doing it ever, and in case you missed it, we had students all from our ministry, both high school and middle school, jump in and serve their families, their friends, their loved ones, OCC. They served firefighters and nurses all around the area. You guys did so great. It was so much fun to watch you guys do this. Even though we couldn't all be together, we still did something together, and that's awesome. Shout out to our 4 winners. You guys did great getting those bingos done really fast. If you want to keep serving, guys, do it. It's a really great way to feel connected to your community right now. And feel free to DM us or text us if you need serving ideas. We can still keep doing it together. Thanks, guys.
Hi friends, right now it is game time. That's right. Each week we play games with one another because guess what? Games are fun. And normally we'd bring you something like trivia or something where you have to guess something about the world, something that might be obscure, might be random. But this week we have something a little bit closer to home, maybe closer to your small group. Yeah, that's right. This is small group leader trivia. I know that your small groups are great, and you know that your small group leaders are great, but you might not know very much about them. You might be surprised at how hard these questions are for you to answer, but that's okay. Here we go. There's going to be 7 questions, and you're going to be asked about one of the small group leaders of your group. So right now, as a group, decide who it is that you are going to select to put under the test of these 7 questions. All right, now you have selected them. Here we go. I'm not going to have an answer key or anything like that, but I'm just going to share you little bits of information that I've gathered over this last week about other leaders you might know in our ministry. So, get ready. Here and go. First question, what is your leader's middle name? It turns out that after a little bit of digging, Neely's middle name is Noreen. So there you go, Neely Noreen McQueen. So get that going. Make sure that you know what your leader's middle name is. Take a wild guess if you don't have one. Question number 2. Question number 2 is, what is your leader's marital status? Maybe you know they're married, but what is their partner's name? Have you been paying attention? Jody just told me this week that she has a new quarantine boyfriend with a first name T. No, that's not true. But does your leader have a partner? Do they have a name? All right. Question number 3. How tall is your leader? You might be surprised that they're shorter or taller than you think they are. As a fact, this week I learned that Sachin is much taller than he seems from on stage. Turns out that a guitar really changes the way that you look. But hey Sachin, we love you. Here it is. How tall is your leader? Question number 4. How old is your leader? They might look ambiguous. You might not be able to tell how old they are. In fact, Eric Chen, ever since I met him, told me that he's 25 years old. And this houseboats, I stole his identification and tried to look at it, but his identification card just said 25. There was no picture of him. There was no birth date. It just said 25 Eric Chen. So who knows? Your leader might have been the same age ever since the last 10 years. So here you go, friends. What is your leader's age? Question number 5. Does your leader have any siblings? This is a real and true fact. Ruthie does have siblings, but how many siblings does your leader have? That is the question. I met one of her sisters and we ate dinner together. This is Ruthie again. And it was fantastic. Such a good time. It was like having two Ruthies at dinner though. All right, question number 6. Has your leader ever tried to be vegan? Strange question. This week I was doing some digging and I learned that Abby was vegan for about 4 years and then gave it up because she loves sardines. Yes, the canned sardines in mustard. So weird. Leader Trivia Learn teaches you a lot about your leaders. So that is question 6. Has your leader ever tried to be vegan? Question number 7, and this is your final question. Is your small group leader secretly addicted to coffee, Diet Coke, or TikTok? I was doing some looking around my home and my parents don't like Diet Coke or coffee, but my dad does have a thing for TikTok, so he's starting to do some dancing around the house. So, does your leader like coffee, Diet Coke, or TikTok secretly? I don't know. It's for you to decide in this installment of Leader Trivia. Thank you, friends. Thank you for playing. You might want to pause right now and see if you were right at all. But, friends, take care and enjoy worship.
Oceans rise, my soul rests in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine. Oh, your grace abounds. Your grace abounds in deepest waters. Your sovereign hand will be my guide. Where feet may fail and fear surrounds me, you've never failed and you won't start now. Keep my eyes above the wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. My faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without border. Let me walk upon the water wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander. My faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace, for I am yours, and you are mine. I want to know you, Lord. I want to know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I want to know you, Lord. Make this your prayer in your heart. I want to know you, Lord, like I know a friend. I want to know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. Want to know you, Lord. I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. Want to know you, Lord. I used to think that I could box you in, but I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. So I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. I'm laying down all my religion. I'm laying down. I want to know you, Lord. That's the prayer of our hearts. We want to know you. We want to know you. Lord, I've been told. Lord, I've been told to be ashamed. Lord, I've been told don't measure up. Lord, I've been told not good enough. But you're here with me. Yeah, you are. Oh, I reach out and you find me in the dust. You say, oh, you say no amount of untruth can separate us. I will rejoice. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. I will rejoice in the simple gospel. I will rejoice in you, Lord. We rejoice in you, Jesus. Thank you, Father God, that you are with us, Lord. In every moment, in every season, God, that we can trust you, that we can rejoice in who you are, because you are a constant, and you are who you say you are. And I thank you for that. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Well, hey you guys, welcome back to another week of Group Life. We are still in our big picture series where we are looking at the life of Joseph, and I'm really excited for the part of the story that we're getting to dive in together tonight. And here's the thing is, whenever I think of like the crazy and difficult circumstances that Joseph endured, I have to imagine that Joseph spent a lot of time asking God, what's the point? What's the point in all of this? And I think if we're honest, a lot of us are asking, what's the point right now too, right? Like for me, what's the point of washing my hair and putting on like real clothes, real pants whenever I'm not going to see anyone? Or maybe for you, it's like, what's the point of doing all of this hard online school when I don't have anyone to help me understand it? Like, is it even going to matter next year? So when we're frustrated and we find ourselves in difficult situations, I think we often ask, like, what is the point of all of this? Like, help me understand, right? And when we feel that way, it's often nearly impossible for us to believe that anything good is going to come from it. It's hard to see the bigger picture. And that's what brings us back to Joseph tonight. You see, Joseph, his brothers threw him into a well. They sold him to slavery. And then just as things were starting to look like there might be a little bit of hope, guess what? Like, we know Joseph got falsely accused of something he didn't do, and then was thrown into prison for punishment. And if I were Joseph, I would be thinking, like, God, you have got to be kidding me. What is the point of all of this? But you see, like, God was working for good, even during Joseph's pain and difficult circumstances. Joseph just couldn't see it yet. And we're going to get into more of the story tonight, because you see, while Joseph was in prison, he wasn't alone. There were two important guys in Pharaoh's household. That was his cupbearer and his baker. And both got thrown into prison with Joseph for a while. And here's what happens. In Genesis chapter 40, it says, while they were in prison, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker each had a dream one night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph saw them the next morning, he noticed that they both looked upset. Why do you look so worried today? He asked them.
And they replied, "We both had dreams last night, but no one can tell us what they mean." Well, you see, you guys, at this time, like, dreams are actually believed to be predictions of what might actually happen in the future. So often when people had weird dreams, they would seek out someone to help them figure out the meaning of their dreams so they could understand what it meant for their future. And Joseph knew that God could help him interpret dreams. Like, Joseph actually had this gift. So he told the cupbearer and the baker that worked for Pharaoh just that. He listened to their dreams and he interpreted them as God showed him what they meant. And so Joseph tells the cupbearer that his dream meant that Pharaoh was going to restore him to his position in 3 days. And then he tells the baker that his dream means that in 3 days that Pharaoh was going to execute him. So he helps them understand their dreams, and then he asks a favor from the cupbearer. You see, he asked that when he got restored to his position with Pharaoh, would he mention Joseph and help him get out of prison? So that was the favor he asked. Let's see what happens next. Goes on to say, Pharaoh's birthday came 3 days later, and he prepared a banquet for all his officials and staff. He summoned his chief cupbearer and chief baker to join the other officials, and he then restored the chief cupbearer to his former position so he could again hand Pharaoh his cup. But Pharaoh impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had predicted when he interpreted his dream. Pharaoh's chief cupbearer, however, forgot all about Joseph, never giving him another thought. You guys, there are 2 important things to note about this passage. The first is that everything that God told Joseph would happen, happened. It did. And the second is this. After all of that, Joseph was forgotten. The cupbearer didn't keep his word, and Joseph remained in prison after all of that. Like, can you even imagine? Like, the author actually goes on to tell us that it took a full 2 years for the cupbearer to finally remember Joseph. He was in prison for 2 full years, and that is such a long time to be waiting and wondering, what could God be up to? I mean, honestly, it hasn't even been a full 2 months in quarantine yet. And if you're like me, you already feel like you're losing your mind. Can you imagine 2 years? But 2 years later, Pharaoh has a dream that no one could interpret. Okay, here's what has happened. Here's where it gets interesting. It was then that the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. So the Pharaoh calls on him to interpret his own dreams, and God helped Joseph do just that. Here's what happens in the story. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has revealed the meaning of the dreams to you, clearly no one else is intelligent or as wise as you are. Only I, sitting on my throne, will have a higher rank than yours." You guys, finally, after all the struggle and suffering, Joseph got good news that seemed like his life was going to finally start changing for the better. What Joseph didn't realize during that time in prison was that God was writing a bigger story. You see, Joseph's story was painful and filled with problems, but through those problems, God was creating a better future for Joseph. Joseph just had to be willing to trust that God could use him right where he was in that time. That even during his pain and his problems, God was working behind the scenes for his good. And guys, I think the same is true for us. We may never understand why we're dealing with the current predicament that we're dealing with and why we're facing these circumstances. But we can always trust that there's a bigger picture for us. And while creating our bigger picture, like, God is working for our good. That is true. That good may not always look the way that we think it should, but when we trust God right where we are, we can trust that He's working toward the best for us, even when we don't see or can't understand it. And this is the thing that I want you to remember today. This is our big idea. When you can't see the bigger picture, trust that God is working for your good. So how do we do that? Well, I want to give you 2 things. Instead of struggling to find the point of our pain, right? Like, how do we trust that God's working for our good? We can take, I think, 2 steps tonight. And the first step is this. We can choose to exercise our faith. You guys, on a daily basis, choose to believe and trust that God is still good and that He has everything in His control. Like, I've actually found myself having to declare God's goodness in my life and in the lives of those around me every time I pray during this season, because I know I need that reminder. Like, I need to hear it. And the second is this: seek encouragement. When you lose sight of the truth that God is working for your good, lean into someone else. Maybe that's a trusted friend, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your small group leader. Just tell someone, like, hey, I need some encouragement right now. Like, I'm having a really hard time seeing the bigger picture and seeing any good in all of this. So remember, you guys, that when you can't see the bigger picture, God is still working for your good. That is true. And as you move into small group tonight, think about this. What's one situation in your life right now that you don't understand the point of? So talk about that. Talk about your questions together, and we'll see you next week.
Well, that's the end of our night together. It's been a sweet night. It's been a good night. We're going to head into small groups. And again, in small groups, remember, this is a safe place for you to share what's really going on, what you're really feeling, and the things you're carrying. Make sure you talk about the questions and pray for each other. You guys are amazing. You're awesome. You're loved. You belong. Can't wait till we're back together. See ya.